Card Games episode, Card Games TV Podcast episode 16. The state of my dueling level, I guess is what I'll say. This is just impromptu, so I have a big topic. Just wanted to talk about some random thoughts of Dragon Ball Super, but what I was just thinking about was the idea that I got to the point where I can easily do 7 damage with most of my decks without very little effort. So that's a big deal, right? So I was thinking, like, would that still count as me mastering the game or not, right? And it's like, if I think of it like Goku's transformations, Ultra Instinct, Omen, and then his Master Ultra Instinct, then technically I'm not, right? Because basically being able to relatively do 6 damage relatively easy, and I've been doing that for a long time, you can consider that like going Super Saiyan Blue, right? Because doing 4 damage in general is, most people can do that. So that wasn't too big of a deal, right? Because most people can do that. But being able to consistently do 6 damage, even as soon as turn 1, the fact that I made a lot of decks where on turn 1 you could do 6+ damage with some of my combo decks, my X combo hit decks, right? X hit combo decks, then that puts me like Super Saiyan Blue status. So then to be able to get to a point of being able to do 7 damage relatively easy with very little to no effort, then that would be like that'd be Ultra Instinct. So the Master Ultra Instinct would be to do 8 damage relatively easy with very little to no effort. So that's definitely a goal that any Dragon Ball Super player wants to get to be able to easily do 8 damage and be able to do it consistently with whatever deck they play. That's the main thing. I don't like the idea of just focusing on being able to do something like do 8 damage, for example, just with one deck. The ability to do it with any deck that I play matters, because that goes back to the player himself. That's why I'm saying like my master level, not saying the decks that I play this meta deck and that meta deck or whatever, right? I play this build, I play that build, and those are the ones that give me essentially my skill level, right? It's more of my actual skill level, the way I play. So the way I play, no matter what deck I play, if I play somebody else's deck or my own decks, I can consistently do 6 to 7 damage with very little effort, just because of how I play, not necessarily what I'm playing, right? So then that's the point of like I'm trying to get to the level of easily being able to do 8 damage relatively easy with very little effort. So that's Master Ultra Instinct, right? So that's just something I was just thinking about, because I've mastered a lot of aspects of the game. Understanding the game, and the more you understand the game and learn about the game, well, obviously that levels up your mastery, right? That's the whole idea of mastery, is getting to fully understand something and being good and consistent with whatever that is. So I obviously got to the best way to put it is I got to expert level, not necessarily master per se, right? Which will be the final form per se. So I haven't yet reached my final form, but I am damn near close. So that's the point. I'm very close to my final form, which is why I'm using the Master Ultra Instinct concept as my final form. The form that I'm still working on achieving. I mean, since I'm very close, it's not too difficult, because I can relatively do 7 damage relatively easy with little to no effort. So it's just a matter of being able to deal that last damage consistently. Typically most of y'all know that I try to do burn damage as my win con. So because I've mentioned many times before, the last damage tends to be the hardest, and part of what makes it hard is your opponent's defense. Either they out combo your attack, or they negate your attack, or they block your attack. And the funny thing is, those are the only 2 things you got to worry about, is them negating your attack, and out comboing your attack. So the more attacks you can get, the better, obviously. So that's why I've been like in my masterclass, I pointed out the idea of like you gotta have stuff that can dual attack, triple attack. The more attacks you can get in a turn, the better, because of the fact that your opponent can out combo, can negate, can potentially block. They can make a decision where they'll take a hit, right, and then you use whatever card was added to their hand to defend themselves. And we got stuff like Baby Hatchiag, and we have stuff like, I mean, even Gasoline Trunks can be a problem. Like you try to play your finisher. If it doesn't have deflect back Gasoline Trunks, then now you can't use your finisher to finish the game, right? So that becomes a problem. Especially if your finisher was a burn effect, but a burn effect that doesn't have deflect, then yeah, Gasoline Trunks will beat it, right? So then that kind of stuff. Then there's the negates that can make blocker tokens. And there's going to be a lot of stuff. I mean, even to the point that they're slowly making cards that that can prevent burn damage. So that's going to be a problem, right? It's like, oh, yep, let's make it harder, right? Make it harder to deal the last 2 damage, right? Currently for me, the last 1 damage. So it's like, okay, it's gonna get harder. That's the factor. The other factor of not being able to, get the W, right, would just be your opponent getting a W before you get a chance to get a W. That kind of stuff. So, because you might be 1 turn away from going for game, but they beat you right before that happened. It's like, God damn it, right? That happens. So that's the kind of stuff you gotta contend with. What else? But that's the whole point of constantly thinking about different ways to play the game. Like I said, the whole idea of they can negate your attacks, they can combo your attacks, trying to find ways to prevent their ability to block, negate, out combo. That's where I had the masterclass of the whole UA thing, the unstoppable attackers concept of using, cards that your opponent can't, or it would be hard for them to stop. Because there's some battle cards that have the effect that your opponent can't combo when you attack. Some cards have the effect that your opponent can't block, or your opponent can't use a counter attack. Like the attack can't be negated. That kind of stuff. What else? Well, there are versions that I think that's about it, right? That's the most typical way you're going to stop an attack would be blocking, negating, or out comboing. Other than that, your attack should go through, right? So the idea is to try to get an attack that can go through. So you always want to be, always like one of the things I used to do back in the day was deal a lot of damage, then try to go for game with, the next turn with everything I got. My opponent would try to survive, negate, out comboing, to do everything they can to try to survive. And then drop an overrun and go for game. Right? That was my most typical play in like 2019 and shit like that, right? But over time, they create sparking negates, so it makes it a little bit harder. Because if they have a sparking negate, well, what I would normally do is I try to go for game when they're tapped out, so they couldn't really play a negate. So then they will have to resort to blockers or combos. And if I play battle cards that when you play them, they kill a battle card, that's a way of getting rid of a blocker. So by them being tapped out, I don't have to worry about negates. By playing a battle card that KOs a battle card or board wipes, right? To make sure there are no blockers, that takes care of 2 things that will stop me from going for game. So the third thing will be their hand size. You have to worry about their ability to out combo your attack. And of course, you got to make sure you have the ability to do enough damage to go for game. If they have 2 life, you want something with double strike, right? For example, you want something with double strike and go for game. But you want to make sure that they can't out combo, they can't negate or block. So, if you play your cards right, as they say, right, if you play the game right, you should be in a position where they don't have blockers, they don't have the energy to tap for like negates and stuff like that. But because they made negates that you could play for free, like the sparking negates and stuff like that, that started making things harder, right? Because like, oh, now for free they can negate. Jesus Christ. Then they made negates you could play for free and create a blocker. It's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Already putting a lot of time and effort trying to bypass that stuff, right? To go for game, right? To win the game. Your goal is to play and have everything set up that for you to win. But then they're just trying to make it harder for you to win. Granted, why not, right? Makes the game more challenging, and I do like a challenge. But I'm just pointing out that it is a challenge. It's like, okay, I can't rely on my opponent being tapped out as my moment to go for game, right? So then now I gotta find a way to prevent them from being able to negate. So playing stuff, battle cards, for example, that can't have their attacks negated, or at least the thing I do now, especially when it comes to negates, is like I was saying, dual attacks or triple attacks. Anything that can attack more than once is something you want, because technically it can bypass a negate. It can even bypass a blocker, right? Because if they only have one blocker, well, you swing, they block, all right, cool, restand, right? Go back to active mode, and then attack again. They would have to have two blockers to stop that one battle card. For example, if it's a battle card, or unison, leader. So if you have a leader, a unison, and a battle card, at least one of each with dual attack, that's 6 attack. Your opponent's going to have to be able to stop 6 attack while they're at 2 life. So that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have a leader that can attack twice. I'm trying to have a leader, a unison that can attack twice. I'm trying to have a battle card that can attack twice. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to drop an overall, right? With the ability to attack twice. That way I have 8 attacks. So this is the mindset you gotta have. It's like the more attacks you can have, the better, because you have to bypass blockers, negates, especially free negates, like they have now, right? And then their ability to out combo. Also, the power of your attacks need to be high too. 25k plus, for example. 30k is more preferred, right? A whole bunch of 30ks swing at your opponent, forces them to require 20 combo power, at least minimum 20 combo power per each attack if they're trying to out combo. So you gotta think math, right? You gotta think about that, right? Because when it comes to blockers, it's just a matter of controlling the board, right? So that's not that big of a deal. When it comes to negates, it's just a matter of them having the energy for it, or if they have the free negates. And most free negates, since it requires to take a life, it's not that beneficial for your opponent to try to use, per se, because your goal is to deal the last 2 damage, right? Especially if you're in that situation, or to deal the 1 last damage. Playing those free negates where they have to take a life benefits you anyway, so it's kind of pointless in that regards. But if they have a little bit more than enough life to survive an attack, then you want to be able to bypass it. So these are things to take into account, to consider. I know a lot of people don't seem to consider them, or at least that information is considered, it's just not shared. And that's unfortunate, because the idea of, like, especially if you're a player that puts out videos and and whatnot, like myself, I'm a player. I'm not a content creator. I'm a player that has ideas and shares it. So that's why it's strange to me when I see a lot of people are not sharing these types of insights, these tidbits, the stuff that can help people improve. It's always about, oh look, this new meta deck, look how awesome it is, it's winning tournaments, you should play it. And then that's it, just copy and paste and you're good to go. It's like, no, because that implies that you couldn't do good unless you copy and paste, right? You couldn't do good unless you net deck. You couldn't do good unless you buy a specific deck and play a specific strategy, which we all know that's not how the world works. Especially in card games, anything can work. I mean, I'm proof of that. Like, any of the decks that I have that I pick up, I can consistently do the same thing over and over again. You know, because that's the point. It's my skill level is part of my decks. It's not just the decks. It's not just, oh, I have a whole bunch of cards and that's it. So the outcomes that I get from playing the game, right, playing the decks that I play, is more because of me, less because of the cards that I play. Right? Especially for the example of the fact that I try to combo less, and I don't play super combos a lot. I play them sometimes, just not as much as other people. Everybody just plays them all the time, right? So that's the difference between me and them. But I still get great results, right? They play super combos a lot. They do all right, or they do good. Hey, to each their own. But the point I'm making is that I don't use super combos that often, and I still get good results. So it proves that the card's irrelevant. Whether I use it or not, it's irrelevant. You know, I will still get the results that I want with or without it, and that's how I measure skill and power level, right? The idea of being good at something is your ability to do something without something, right? Anybody can brag about like, oh, I'm really good with this bike that has training wheels. All right, cool. But I'm good with a bike without training wheels, as an example. So it's like, you know, some people will brag about like, oh yeah, I got this car. It's super fast because I put a supercharger or I put a really cool engine in it. Like, all right, cool. But I have this regular average car. Didn't do anything to make it any better, but it's still fast as fuck, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I noticed that I see a lot. Some people will try to tell me like, oh man, you need to play super combos, blah, blah, blah. It's like, but it doesn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help me win more, right? If it did, I would be doing it, right? I'll be playing them if it won me more matches, but they don't really do much. It's especially when I'm at the point where I'm trying not to combo at all, right? I'm not trying to discard cards from my hands just to not take damage. I either rather take the damage, block the attack, or negate it, right? Use a blocker that I used to attack earlier, but then I restand it and use it to block an attack. So I can attack, block. I'd rather do that than to discard valuable cards from my hands just to stop an attack. You know, in many ways, I might as well just take the hit and add that card to my hand. You know, benefit from it. Why try to, you know, why waste cards from my hands when I could just benefit from taking damage? So that's like the mindset that I have. That's the way I play. It's like, you know, why do all this extra stuff, right? With a lot of decks, when I play against a lot of decks, I just focus mainly on damage output, focusing on trying to get to my win con, and that's about it. Very, very rarely, you know, focus on what my opponent's doing and what they're not doing, right? The only thing I really focus on is, are they attacking me, right? Are they attacking me? Can I survive this turn? How many turns will it take for me to get to A, my win con, and B, A, to get to my win con? So can I survive that long? Like if I have if my deck is basically a turn 5 win con deck, then it's like, okay, based off of whatever deck I'm going up against, how often can I get to turn 5? That's my main focus. I mean, how often can I get to turn 5? And how do I have to play, right? How do I have to play my deck to get to turn 5? Because that's important, right? If I win typically on turn 5 because the way I built the deck, then I need to make sure that I'm at a mindset of making decisions that translates to that gets me from, you know, from turn 1 to turn 5. So I have to be able to go through the steps. One of the things I like to do now is use the Goku Adventure Begins with the 4-star ball as a way to at least turn 1 and turn 2 prevent damage, just because I can use it to out combo at least the leader swing. because turn 1, typically opponent's just going to swing with the leader and not do much of anything turn 1. Turn 2, they might drop a 2-drop unison, so I might have to try to out combo a leader swing and a unison swing on turn 2, right? But that's about it. So try to prevent the first 2 damage. So then the idea is turn 3 and above is when I start taking damage. So turn 3, I might take 1 or 2 damage and go from there. But the idea is to try to, not take damage. if I can help it, right? If I can help it, I try not to take damage. So that's the kind of stuff that I try to focus on. So I try not to take damage on those turns, on the first 2 turns, if I can help it. Turn 3, try not to take damage, but if I have to take it, take less, right? You always want to take at least a minimum, right, of 0 to 1 damage. You don't want to take 2 damage a turn. You want 1 to 0. This 0 is ideal, obviously, right? But at least 1. If you can manage to reduce damage down to 1 damage, you're doing good. I mean, that's the way I measure, the way I play is making sure that the damage I take is down to 1, which is why I focus on trying to make sure that I can try to out combo turn 1 at least, right? Depending on the deck, the leader I'm playing typically determines if I'm going to take damage turn 1 or let myself take damage turn 1, depending. There's some leaders, like for example, I use the Zamasu set 2 leader, the one where when you awaken, every time you take damage, you mill the top cards of your deck. That one, I typically try not to stop the first attack. I just take the damage, right? So that's the type of leader that I won't try to stop taking the first couple damage. If anything, I'm trying to take 6 damage so I can awaken, right? But with many other leaders, I would try not to take damage, like Hatchiak. For example, I would like to not take damage turn 1, turn 2, right? Since I awaken, if I'm, going mono black or whatnot, or I'm going the strategy of awakening Hatchiak, then I want to get to turn 3, right, to awaken and whatnot, and I would like to still have all 8 life. Then after that, that's when I start taking damage. Because typically the goal is to try to get to turn 5, 6, maybe 7 with Hatchiak. You could go longer if you can, make the right line of plays, right, to stall that long, where you're negating a lot of attacks, you're board wiping, negating a lot of attacks, board wiping. That's typically what you want to do with Hatchiak. Negate attacks, board wipe, negate attacks, board wipe. But of course, get some attacks in, right? Obviously. Try to get as many attacks as you can get in there as possible. What else? What else I want to talk about? I'll probably make some more decks in the near future. There's some cool new cards that I would like to look into. I've just been busy with many other stuff, so I haven't been working on many decks. I had a couple, good ideas for Hatchiak decks, so I built some and posted them online. Definitely, can't wait to see new cards come out in newer sets. See what happens. See if I can drastically improve certain decks. Typically, what's ironic is that I mainly focus on upgrading my Hatchiak deck, my Bomba deck, my Gohan deck, my Burnhan, or Burn Gohan deck, whatever you want to call it, and my Zamasu deck, my set 2 Zamasu deck, obviously. So those are like my 4 main decks I tend to try to, keep upgrading, keep improving them, get them stronger. Obviously, my Bulma deck is a burn deck. My Hatchiak deck is typically a burn deck. I flip flop back and forth. I try to do mill, try to make it a mill deck, but typically I try to use it as a burn, a stall burn deck. Zamasu currently, what version I'm going with? It is if I might have an Enter 17 turn of tides, so it's turning the tides. What is it called? That field card. I changed it recently, so I really don't remember exactly what it is. I think there's a lot more Zamasu cards in it, so it definitely should be Tragedy Overground. So Zamasu Tragedy Overground. And I think if I'm right, I have Android 17 turn ties in there. I might have the 10 drop Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta Frenzy Burst, the one that burns for 4 essentially. So I technically have that. So I'm not doing the skillless Zamasu deck where I bring back a whole bunch of skillless battle cards and go for game. So I'm kind of leaning towards 17 turns tie WinCon, burn with Gogeta WinCon, or Tragedy Overground, and just have the advantage from that WinCon basically. So that's pretty much what I'm going with that deck. And then what was the other deck that I mentioned? Well, must burn. Hachiak is technically burn right now. Zamasu. Oh, and the Gohan. If I'm right, I actually implemented some burn strategy into the Gohan. So it's still the X hit combo deck where it's what number is it? I think I'm doing an 8 hit combo deck, I think it was. It's been a while, I can't remember. I think it's 8 hit or 8 or 10, one of those numbers. I could do a lot of damage turn 1, obviously. It's one of the decks I started off with that multiple hit strategy was Gohan. So so I still can turn 1, deal my opponent, 6+ damage almost consistently. And I threw in some burn elements in case I go past turn 3 and whatnot. So if I don't beat my opponent turn 2 and 3 and I end up on turn 4 and 5, then I have some burn stuff for it. So I am leaning toward, as you can see, I keep trying to incorporate burn. So that's what I'm doing with those. But that's about it, right? Because if I'm right, I have in my Gohan, because in my Gohan deck I have the 1 drop. Is it the Gohan deck that I have that card in? No.